All right, so welcome, Frederik, to this exciting webinar. I know you're very excited. You have been talking, we have been talking about this, and you're getting ready for this session. So I'm very happy to have you here, and you're going to be rock, superstar today, and you're going to share a lot of knowledge. And I'm very, very happy to have you here. How are you today?
Thank you for the invitation. I'm very good, and as you said, I'm very excited. I feel like I'm prepared, and I'm eager to join. I hope we can get a discussion going as well, and that people they don't hesitate and don't hold back if there are questions.
Yeah, so I will be very excited if I see more and more questions. It will be great. So guys, please make sure you utilize this opportunity to ask questions, and to Frederik or to me. I'll be very happy to have answering those questions. So about Frederik, I don't know how much you've gone through learning about Frederik by LinkedIn, but let me tell you, he's one of the highly accomplished professional with 17 plus years of extensive experience. The good thing about him is he has been part of a Royal Danish Army. I think you started as sergeant and you've gone up to first lieutenant, and you have provided your service to the country. Great stuff. Well done.
Thank you.
And then you are into IT. I think IT project and program management now, and working for NaviPartners, and you are heading the consulting division, which is good to have, good to know about. And you're currently working as the operations officer at NaviPartner, and taking care of project program, portfolio management, and business activities. And I'm very happy to say you completed your prestigious certificate, PfMP, on October 24th, 2022. And just reminding, actually, that reminded me one thing. 4 years ago, October 24th, 2018, I did my PfMP. Yay! What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a journey, and I think I learned a lot from my journey, and I'm sure you got a lot out of your learning, which you more than welcome to share. Something people like to know about, but the focus today is to talk about something very interesting about the project teams. How was your journey with PfMP? Why did you do PfMP? What was the reason?
Yeah, that's one of the questions I didn't prepare. No, there was multiple reasons, I guess, like for everybody else. It's multiple reasons you join. One of them was to get a certificate, of course, a paper that you can show, you can put it on your CV, and you can leverage it if you do job interviews, or if you want to achieve something with your career. That was part of it. Another part was investigating PMI. I have not had any other experience, like the rough experience with PMI, so investigate that whole world and what it is and how things are done. And that was very nice. And then, of course, slightly, only a small part of it though, but actually educating myself. But I think at least when I started the PfMP, the idea was not to take an extensive education. It became an education because you need to study so much for the exam, but that was not the motivation.
Yeah, so how long it took for you to complete your PfMP?
It took me, I want to say, from February to October, I think. So 10 months. And
10 months, okay. So
during those 10 months, I had a marriage, so I had to pause it a bit, and we did a marriage abroad, so that required some planning. And then when I came back, I did my exam. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So, anything exciting you learned from me during the PfMP journey?
Yeah, of course, many things. I really like how the PfMP emphasizes the need for governance and the need for strategic alignment, and that the idea about working effectively, like if we don't achieve our goals it doesn't really matter how well we do the whole portfolio management and how well we do project management. If we don't hit the target, the machine can be also good. I think that was one of the strong messages I took away.
Great stuff. Thank you. Thank you for accepting me as your mentor. I hope you liked it. And of course, the result is telling you that it, yeah. All right. So, so guys who are watching today, I've shared a couple of links. If you are interested in doing PgMP PfMP, you can use those links to know a little more about PgMP and PfMP, how it can be done. And it's not difficult. Yes, people do talk about the certificate can be very complex and long journey, but having 447 PgMPs from 52 countries and 108 PfMPs, and numbers look small, but if you look at percentage-wise, it's around 10 to 12% between PfMP and PgMP. The contribution from my side. And the good thing is that people come to me with the trust, and I'm able to give them the guidance, the direction to make them ready to pass the exam. With PfMP, I am maintaining 99.07%, and yes, I have a less than 1% something happened in between, but anyway, so it's still better than. I'm proud of these numbers. Anyway, so look, anything you like to know, anybody like to know about PgMP, PfMP, happy to help you out and we can work on it. So, Frederik, I have a few questions for you and we're going to go through them. And the people watching today, thank you very much for joining. And I know some of you are middle of night or early morning, but your passion to learn and passion to learn from Frederik and passion to learn from me. And you have been coming back to these webinars again and again. That means that's giving me confidence that whatever we are doing, I'm doing, is you're benefiting out of this. So hopefully you continue to learn from people like Frederik and a few other people coming. You know, lots of people lined up. I think my calendar is blocked for June or July. So lots of great people are about to come. And so keep yourself watching the LinkedIn space and your emails. Hopefully you will find something useful out of them. All right. So any few words you want to say before we get started?
Not particular. No. Maybe just to remind people to use the chat if I need to slow down, if I start speaking too fast, just write it, and if I use terminology that is not familiar, just I can elaborate on it. So don't feel free to engage.
Yeah, and guys, please use a question pad for asking the questions. I don't know if Frederik can see them, but I will read out for Frederik, and we'll have discussion around that. More questions you would ask, you will be engaged, you will learn a lot from these discussions. So I have lots of questions, and I will ask questions. So today's topic is very interesting, especially around the project teams, and we're talking about high performance project teams from portfolio manager's perspective. Okay, if you are in the role of portfolio manager, program manager, so you like to see, and a project manager like to see a high performing team. So we have questions around that. So my first question, Frederik, for you is, are virtual project teams really different from classic collocated teams?
And my question to that is yes, they are. And I'm going to highlight as I answer the questions if something is like a personal opinion of mine or if it's research based. And when I say that, it's because I have done my education within the field. I've done my master's thesis on the field, and some of it is an acknowledged knowledge. So I try to emphasize whenever it's my own personal opinion that shines through. But there are differences between co-located teams and virtual teams. So we used to have these co-located teams a lot, and they're also called classic project teams. And then we kind of transitioned into globally distributed teams, which meant that people no longer sat together. Now they sat separated from each other, and separated that that doesn't mean necessarily on the other side of the globe. It could be another city. The point is that you don't see each other face to face on a regular basis. And then recent years, and saying that maybe the last, I want to say 20 years, we leaned more into this or this new concept emerged that was called like virtual project teams. And in the theory and for a lot of researchers and in practice, there's not a big distinction, but I see that it's coming now. Virtual teams can breach both co-located teams and global teams. It's, for many, it's seen as a dimension that you can have in your team. And that's because now a lot of our teamwork is being done in a new special way, where a lot of it is online, it's through applications, all of our communication is through applications. I can touch upon some of the things that are different as well, like of course the opt-in culture, that you're not surveilled all the time, but you actually need to opt in, you need to actively participate. It creates fewer spontaneous and unplanned interactions. Those coffee dialogues or dialogues at the coffee machine, they rarely take place. And I'll get more into that later, how that shines through and the performance. Then the mean, when we talk about communication, you normally have synchronous and asynchronous, right? Where the asynchronous is I send a message, it could be a text, it could be email, and then you respond. Where the synchronous is like now we talk at the same time. And a lot of the communication is limited to the technology, where if we are co-located, it's not limited. We can use both. We can use both this option where we can record and go back, but we can also read each other's full body language. Where now we're limited to only one side of it. And then diversity in project among project team members, that changes in virtual teams. And I think I'll get back to that later, and otherwise I can jump back to this question if we have more time.
Yeah. So like there's advantages of having virtual team and disadvantages as well. And sometimes we have no option. We have to work with the virtual team because the team is spread across around the world. The only thing you can do, yes, and co-location is great. It's not always possible. And so what do? We have to ensure that we have the people working in other part of the world. They are very much connected, and they are available. We can see them, talk to them almost anytime. And of course, you have to worry about the time difference and other thing, and making sure that you are connected with your team. While they are away. But as a portfolio manager, program manager, project manager, you continuously build foundation with them, relationship with them. Yes, physical, you always have, you can see each other, you can see the body language. But in this case, how often we do see the body language? We just see the front face. That's it. What is happening with them, what mental status they are, that's something you as a project manager can explore and, work with them, identify them, maybe they need more support from you. So it can be a challenge. It can be a very interesting way to working. I have worked with many companies, and I have since I think probably 96, 97, 98. I'm in the virtual environment, and my team is sitting in India or in Australia or New Zealand, and it has worked most of the time. Anyway, thank you. I have a question. The question is for Frederik. What has been your experience, the observed gap in terms of practical reality and the PMI theory in order to pass the
exam? That's a big question. I think actually, so the PMI way of doing things and the PfMP, they provide some standards, and they provide, when I say standard, it's more like some principles and some, I want to call it best practice, but it is principles where so if you do these things, you're supposed to get the best outcome. And since it's not a methodology, it's a little bit hard to say there's a gap. It's some principles you can follow. You can take some of it with you. You can leave some of it behind. Of course, there's a whole structure to how all of it is educated and how all of it is structured in the theory. And I found there was quite a high amount of transfer. Like there was a very little gap between what was taught and the reality. And that is mainly because a lot of it is it's principles and guiding rules, like which tool is good to use for risk analysis. It doesn't tell you, use this tool every Friday. It tells you these are the tools that are good to use, or how should issues be escalated. Of course, when you get into the more soft areas, it's hard to describe in a single book. So if you get into the more soft areas, like we have this challenge, how should it be handled? And PFMI will suggest we can handle it through education, or we can handle it through onboarding new team members. It always becomes blurred because there's only so much context to it, and you need to kind of, I don't want to say guess the context, but understand the context that they frame the question in. And of course, in your own organization, the context is different, so your answer will be slightly different. I don't know if that covered it.
No, that's good, and I'm sorry to put you on spot, but let me take it further. I have been working with so many portfolio managers, program managers, directors, and so many, and I do get this kind of question all the time, because in reality, you're running a portfolio, maybe in Denmark, maybe in US, maybe in Chile, or anywhere in the world. Every organization has matured differently, so you have different set of processes. Yes, I'm not saying good or bad, but only thing is, when PMI talks, PMI is trying to bring a standard way of doing things. That doesn't mean they are the 100%, but they are. I mean, what they're saying, let's standardize everything. Okay, and when you go to the exam, definitely you need to think about what PMI expects you to answer the question. Because if you think from organizational point of view, you're going to struggle with your answer, and you may not get right. But you have to think, okay, in this situation, this kind of scenario, if I have to answer the question, I have to think from PMI's point of view, where there's documentation into the issue log, where there's a change log, follow the process, whatever it is. So whenever you go for exam, think from the PMI's point of view, from the standard of the portfolio management, or from the PMBOK or whatever standard you have to follow. I hope this answers your question. And if not satisfied, let me know, and you can put your further subsequent question on top of it. But thank you for asking. All right, Frederik, my next question for you is, what must organization do? What must organization do to make their project team more effective?
Yeah, and I think I could talk about this forever, so I'll try to limit my answer a little bit. When you talk about project teams and how they collaborate and how they perform, it's basically down to how the individual perform and how you perform as a team.
Yeah.
And how the individual perform, there's tons of theory on that. My own take on it is that there's the motivation, there's the skill, and there's your conditions you work in. And there's a million theories that say something about motivation and work conditions. I can elaborate if we have more time afterwards. I think the team variables, they are more interesting. There are some variables as well that kind of define how well the team can work. And there are 6. And they are trust, cohesion, diversity, shared mental models, shared context, and the tools and technology, because we're talking virtual teams. And if I need to just quickly elaborate a little bit on them, trust is the most important, and trust comes down to basically, do I trust what you say, and will I act upon the things you say? It's so important because limiting trust will will eventually do that I hold back information. I won't share information if I don't trust you, and I won't share nice to know stuff with you. It will also maybe let me double check your work or follow up with you and waste my energy. It can be harder to receive feedback if you don't trust the sender. You might close down for feedback. Then you have, and trust is also reliability. That's a big part of trust. So it might be that I trust your intentions are good, but your actions are not reliable to me. I cannot foresee what you will do.
Yeah.
Then cohesion, and that's been called many things. It's a merge of many things. It's also called team membership or team spirit, and it's actually this is proven theory that, or not proven, but acknowledged theory that having a high cohesion, having a team that sees itself as a team and want to put an effort in it and want to be a team and fight for each other and are seen by others as a team, they have better communications, and they act better on conflicts. So it might be that we have a conflict, but if we have high cohesion, then we can still perform while having a conflict. We can set it aside and we can perform, and then we can maybe take it up in a lesson learned afterwards or something like that. We're able to do that if we have high cohesion. Then diversity, I pitched it a little bit earlier. The idea about diversity is you can have diversity on many things, of course. You can have gender diversity. It means people of different gender in your team. You can have educational diversity and cultural diversity, age diversity. And normally we say that diversity is good for solving complex problems because you have different approaches, you have different perspectives, you come with different ideas. But this is one of the things that changes a little bit with virtual teams. And it's actually double-edged blade. So unless you really know how to utilize it, if you know how to utilize the people you have and the skills they have, then it's positive. But in all other cases, it influences the performance negatively. And that's because it's so much harder for us to build norms when we don't have these spontaneous communications, when we don't eat lunch together, when I don't see you frustrated, when I only see you when you put on your shirt and now you're ready for a session, then it's harder for us to build norms about how do we do at work, what are our priorities. And when we have different norms and different priorities, it affects the reliability. Then it's hard for me to predict what you're going to do, and it influences the trust. So all of these variables, they're kind of entangled, but I think it's obvious to many people that when you have less communication, there's a bigger risk of miscommunication. Like if we are different from each other, it's hard for us to misunderstand each other's intentions also. Then I mentioned shared mental models. And the idea is that we work using the same models and the same cognitive behavior. So they can be divided like into task-related models and team-related modules. Task-related modules, that's how do we approach a task? It could be that we have a standard we follow and we say, okay, we always, first we scope, then we estimate, then we design, then we implement, then we write documentation. This is fairly simple. Or first we open Zoom, and then we go up and we click here, and here is where we record the session, things like that. Team related is more like how we do as a team, like what is our rhythm? Do we have standoffs every Tuesday? How do we give feedback? What do we do between each other? How do we share information? Yeah, then there's the shared context. So where the shared mental models are very it can be very grounded and very down to earth, very tangible. It can be like, am I using Microsoft Teams and you're using Zoom? Like, do we use the same processes? Do we document things in the same way? Then the shared context is more about, do we have the same understanding of the culture and the situation? And that can be understanding of priorities and understanding of roles and responsibility. Do we agree what's your responsibility and what's my responsibility and what my role is? And do we have the same view on our effort? Like your idea might be that we are here for the client, we work this project and we put in 80 hours a week. And my idea is it's Friday, I go home now. So that's the context. And then finally, tools and technology, which is a bit more simple. It influences the performance a lot, but it's things like, do you have access to internet? Do you have the right applications that you need? And do you have, when we start to talk about virtual teams, things like permission is very important. Can you actually access the information, or is it safe kept and only for the team manager or only for the project manager? Can you get the information you need? And that's what I said earlier a little bit, that the synchronous communication is challenged by the technology. It gets better, and a lot of companies are posting a lot of money into making it better. So I want to say was Samsung that made this new almost 3D where you have curved monitors, you have speakers all around, because they want to make it as much a real experience as possible. You can see the whole person, and like if I could smell you, and it would be even better. But it will always be an opt-in situation where when you leave, I cannot see if you're frustrated with me. You will vent out somewhere else, and we don't have a chance to take that discussion where I can come and say, is that problem? Is something we need to talk about? Yeah, so they are like the variables. There are also other things that are interesting to say, like the thing about time. You move through stages when you perform as a team. Tuckman said it with his forming, storming, norming, performing stages. And when you mature as a team, doing it virtually, it can be slower because you have less contact points.
Yeah.
I think, as I said in the beginning, I feel like I can talk forever about this. I'm going to stop now in respect for the time and the rest of the questions.
Nice, good discussion. I know the way you're explaining one by one every point. It's, like it, and I think people also liking it. So no, good. So thank you for sharing. And it's actually a very good question, interesting question. Where what else can we do to make our project team performing effectively? Whether it's the culture, whether it's in the leadership, or the motivation, team building activities. A lot of things can be done to make your project team more effective, especially when you are talking co-location. And of course, virtually we have other ways to improve the motivation and work together as a team. Doesn't matter. But thank you for sharing. All right. Okay, my next question is, what is the biggest mistake organizations make when implementing their project framework?
And jumping straight to it, I would say it's neglecting the training. No one becomes good at anything without training it. And I see a lot of organizations implement a framework or implement a new model, a new way of doing things, or a new system. And then they write some documentation. They could formalize some standard operation procedures or practices, or they have some documents. And then they expect that to carry the quality of the team. So it's like, yeah, we wrote it here, and if something is not going well, if we don't use a camera, then we write in the documentation, remember to use camera, and then that document is supposed to carry. I'm a strong believer of the perfect practice makes perfect. And I've seen touching many organizations that if you don't train and you don't train the right way, then you risk creating habits that are unfortunate or bad. And if you have organizations where they go over budget in their projects, or the scope creeps, or they accept too much risk, or they do other things that are inappropriate, then it creates habits and it becomes the way of doing it. If you take any other team that is a high performance team, if you take the NFL teams, if you take the basketball team, the swimming team, the Olympic teams, I want to say surgeons, armies that operate, then they train, which means that they actually go out and they rehearse what they're going to do, and they give feedback on it, and they improve. And I rarely see that when implementing a project framework. Another thing, just to quickly round it up, is I see that what people do to make their teams better is they do teamwork or team building. And team building is great. The idea is to build a team, but they overemphasize some areas. Either they are not aware of what they're trying to achieve, or they overemphasize the focus on cohesion. And by that I mean, they say, okay, the idea about our team building is we need to get to know each other and know each other in a private setting. So let's go out and bowl, or go to cinema and then eat pizza and then chit chat. And it's good. It's important to have the cohesion where you understand each other's cultures and each other's norms and you align. But it's rarely output driven, and you rarely train the other things. Train which the shared mental models. Like, okay, let's sit down and train how we actually do this documentation, or how we solve this task, how we approach the client, how we deliver a business case.
Okay, good. I mean, I like the point you are emphasizing, that lack of training, and many organizations, they don't have enough budget to train their staff. They're just saying, okay, one is if I train them, they will leave the organization. Okay, if they leave the organization, but the problem is you're working with untrained people, which is more risk for you. And if you train them, provide the right education and right tools, they will do a better job. Yes, there's a risk. Some people might leave, but they're a good team you have, and also people trust your organization. They like to, okay, this organization is looking after the staff, the well-being of the staff, and the training and opportunities. So that's where people love about. So I think training and team building activities, and good team building activities. Not just sit together, just pizza. It's good to have, but take them out in a non-work environment. Let's say some bowling club, or maybe some other places where people can be natural, just like a human being, so they can interact with each other as normal. And then you open up, instead of in the work environment, you're a boss, and this is, there's a different culture. But when you're the open, like a bowling club, you're the team and you're working differently, and you build your frequency with your other colleagues as well as your manager, and you start relating with them. And that actually comes to your organization when you're actually working in the team, in the organization, because now a different relationship, you can talk to the person very freely, and the other person is helping you. And I've seen this happening. You need to really look after your team by providing right training and the team building activities, right environment. As a project manager, one of the things is you have to create an environment for them, so the people can perform really well. And the things like you probably heard about, the servant leadership. So as a project manager, you are the one creating the environment where you're going to remove all the obstacles for the team and provide all the environment so they can actually work really at the high performance the way they have to. Good, thank you.
Yeah, I very much agree. I think the thing about people, and there's questions later about the cost and how we train and so, but first off, I rarely see people leave if they are in a setting where they develop and where they, of course, there might be a better option, but it's not the general idea that if you are in a place where things are actually done well and you develop yourself as a person and you grow, then normally you stay. And there's a difference between training somebody to be extremely good at SAP or Oracle or Microsoft Dynamics, and then they can leave, and training them for the team processes, which is hard to carry on. You know, like it's a standard of the company or the organization.
Exactly. Yeah. So you look after your staff, and staff will look after you. That's where the your bonding with wealth as well as loyalty also coming to your loyalty towards the staff and staff loyalty towards the organization. Yeah, and I know in the current environment where big organizations say, okay, we are laying off 50,000 people, 20,000 people, which is not encouraging, but that's what is happening. What you can do as a person, make yourself well trained, well equipped with any such situation. If you have to go through this layoff position, at least you're ready to deal with or maybe to find another job faster, better. Anyway, good, thank you. All right, what kind of challenges do organizations face when trying to create high performance team?
Yeah, and I think we are already leaning into it, because when I'm talking about these high performance teams, I'm talking about taking 6 variables, enhancing them, making a team work together and get to know each other and get to work the same way and use time and also take the time out to train them. So obviously this is expensive and it requires resources. And I think for most of organizations, it's not the problem is not taking the people out. The problem is the opportunity cost. These people, they're supposed to work towards some kind of output or benefit for the organization. Then it's also a problem I see, at least with having trainers and staff who know how to act as trainers, how to give constructive feedback. I've seen it a little bit in the framework, and my idea was not to dive into frameworks, but like the Kanban, or sorry, the Scrum methodology, where the idea is you have a Scrum Master who trains people and he knows the framework and he knows the shared mental models and he trains people. So I think that's one of the reasons it's getting a lot of attention and is winning grounds. Then of course it's a challenge that people change jobs, and I think that's a challenge because if you take football players or soccer players or things like that, and they change jobs, they take the shared mental models with them. Like, okay, they might be doing it differently in that club, but the idea is the same. We have the same people, we have the same roles, the same amount of people on the field. We have some attack formations and defense formations. Whereas if you get a new person into your organization in a commercial world, or in many commercial organizations, it can be done vastly differently. So you need maybe to train the person for half a year or a year before they understand. And then finally, I want to say this challenge about dedicated teams versus a competitive advantage. So now I'm talking about trying to build some teams where you and I will work together, we know each other well. But if you are to allocate most of your time with this team and create team spirit, then it works in the opposite direction as competitive advantage. Like you allocate a little bit of your time wherever you make the biggest difference. Like we want you to host a lot of webinars because that's what you're good at, not necessarily staying with the same people. So yeah, those are some of the challenges. I can say something about an approach to it, but I think maybe we can get into it later as well. I see time is flying.
Yeah, there are these challenges, where we know that, of course, the money can be one of the things, while they want to create, you have intention, but you may not have the required funding. So, or you have not budgeted for that. So one thing is very important for you to look at, okay, how much budget I need for making my team high performance, what training they need, what training needs they have, and whatever we have to do, we should do in the coming months, coming days, coming weeks, and so that we can stay a high performing team and stay together and do the great jobs. Okay. I have a question, and let me read it out. When you talk about best practices regarding portfolio management, my question is, what are good portfolio practices which any portfolio manager should be aware of?
Best practices, and what are good practices that any portfolio manager should be aware of?
Yeah.
Oh, I think there are so many. It's hard to, highlight like one. It also depends so much on the culture and the organization. I would say that obviously as a portfolio manager, and I'm leaning towards the PfMP and PMI approach here, I have an overall responsibility that the portfolio itself is going in the right direction. So whenever if you sit as a portfolio manager, you will often have a view on what's the purpose with this portfolio, and you'll be able to dive into projects or programs or even operations and help them and say, let's steer over here, or you can neglect that, let's go this way. But as soon as the whole portfolio is not sailing the right direction, you need to be able to get back in the helicopter, and you need to be able to focus on your primary objective, which is ensure that the portfolio stays strategically aligned. It's not really a best practice. I think best practices they must be so specific to the market or the company. Like a best practice for us in my company could be we have a best practice of avoiding trying to eliminate multitasking and trying to do that, to sequence our projects in a way where we do them, you can say, kind of in a sprint, but we try to put an effort into finalizing one project and then relax and then check on another project from A to B or A to C and closing it, rather than having two projects running at the same time. That could be a best practice, but it's not relatable in all organizations.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you. So best practices or good practices, which are many portfolio managers, of course, PMI has their own way of saying the standard practices. And you correctly mentioned, as a portfolio manager, you have to keep analyzing your portfolio's performance. Are you performing as expected, as per your expected value, expected portfolio alignment, strategic alignment? So that's something we have to keep an eye on, which PMI is very, very particular about. Strategic alignment. And having a governance setup, right governance setup, it has to be there. Roles and responsibilities are defined for various roles. They know what to do, in case of escalation and other places. The stakeholder engagement, the performance evaluation, and having the right tools with you. So that there are many things we can do as a portfolio manager. And of course, going through the standard for portfolio management, 3rd edition. Of course, if you're preparing for the exam, 3rd edition is useful. If you're looking for knowledge, 4th edition is actually much better book. But for the example for 3rd edition, and yeah, the PMI has a lot to offer. Go through the books, the standard for program management or PMBOK or many of the books which can help you to learn the standard practices from PMI. And these standard practices or best practices coming from the experience of people around the world. They have knowledge in project program portfolio management. They are the one who's writing these books and putting the things together. So I think the best way is to get together, go through the PMI standards and learn from them. All right, so okay, I hope we have answered the question. Okay, let me ask you the next question. Are organizations ready to train their employee with new technologies, as it is time consuming costly and uncertain in the current VUCA environment.
Yeah, and I think leaning a little bit on the variables for what actually makes teams perform, I will say that why train people. So like not why train people, but why introduce new technology. It's not necessarily one of the variables. So the technology, they allow us to do some things, right? They might allow us to work better, to document better, to have the whole chat AI that is up, and you know that is a big discussion now. How do we implement that? Can it benefit us? I think the trick for many organizations is to try to limit the amount of technologies they use. And that comes back to the idea about the shared mental models. It's very important that the team members, they use the same models and they use the same approach when they solve tasks. And many have probably been in a scenario where you ask a member something like, how did you come to that conclusion or that agreement? And they said, oh, he answered me on a text message, or I wrote to him on Zoom, or I did this, or I did that, or actually the chat, what is called chat CPG, came with a suggestion for it. And for some organizations, it's very hard to control how many applications are taken into use. So I think it's more about training people in which applications do we use, and like how should they be used, what do we use for what, instead of having documentation on both your Dropbox and your SharePoint and on your Yammer and on your project management tool. Then within the organization standard, okay, we're writing our discussions here and we're writing our documentation here, things like that.
Okay, good stuff. So yeah, so are the organizations ready to train their employees? You know, I think many organizations do invest money in the new technology, and what you said, you know, a lot of things are happening in the current environment. Everybody's talking about AI, you know, artificial intelligence and chat GPT and many things. So if you don't train them, of course you will be left behind. So that's one. As an organization, you need to keep an eye what is coming up, and is my team ready to handle this kind of situation of technology. So yeah, you know, while it's going to cost money and time, of course, without that, you cannot train them. You know, get them training and get them on the right path. Get them right project management, portfolio management, program management certification. You know, you never know. You know, as you train them, they become better and they perform better. And for the, I have actually shared the PDU code on the chat. If you have not seen, please take a note of that. And people watching the video, please let me know once you have watched the video. Dharam, I watched the video, and something interesting, the discussion we're having now. And Dharam, this is what I learned from that. I like to see that. And I will share the PDU code with you. All right, my next question is it feasible to aim for high performance team in a cost sensitive market?
Yeah, and to understand the question, I think the idea is that if you operate in a market where you have a small margin and you may not be able to afford the effort, then what do you do? Like as we said before, it both has an opportunity cost to take people out who's now training for high performance rather than producing something. And yeah, I think it's important to note that it's not all or nothing. Of course, if you want to train for the Olympics, it becomes all of nothing, right? There are only so many people who can participate. If you want to be top 10 company in the world, if you want to win a public tender for something, you need to aim towards that and be better than the other. But other than that, it's about doing something. And I would say that it goes a little bit like by maturity stages, as well as Stockman describes it, that you can do something and then you get a team that now recognize each other and recognize itself as a team, and you can do some more things, and then you have a team that becomes self-driven, and and can maybe foresee problems, invent new tasks themselves, and so. But doing something is better than nothing. And so maybe it's not feasible actually to aim for high performance team, but just well-performing teams. And then the idea about training and being part of something that works well motivates most people. So in a cost-sensitive market, and in a market we have where it might be hard to get new employees, and you have to train new employees, and it's heavy, and as I said, it takes a year to train a new employee to be good, then retaining employees is equally or even more important. And giving people an opportunity to train and do, mastery, where they become good at something, that motivates people to stay. Not a personal opinion. It's I have it from Paul Glenn, who's an author at Computer World, among other things.
Great. All right, good. I do have a question from the audience, which is already given to us previously as part of the registration. What should you consider when implementing a project delivery framework in agile product setting?
Yeah, I had it in advance, and I've been thinking about it, and I think it's a hard question to answer. So what should you consider when implementing this project framework? I would say consider training, as I said earlier. Consider that it's not enough to implement it and write it and introduce it and have an onboarding. Normally when you do your budget, you understand that if we introduce something new, we need to onboard people, we need to train them, and then it's done. Training is something that should be done continuously. You get new employees in, and you create bad habits where you want to have an environment where you can create some lesson learned, and you can take them and you can discuss them, and the best of them, they can transition into becoming a best practice of the organization. Then, since it's an agile, and many agile frameworks, they run in sprints. If they do that, you can maybe train in smaller cycles, so you don't need to train the whole project delivery. You can train certain sprints. You start by training the design phase and go through everybody's roles and responsibility and what do they do, and you train, like, you align the idea of, okay, when we are in design, we work normally, but as we approach go live, it's expected for people to put an extra effort, and you put words into, like, what is an extra effort, and you rehearse the idea, and yeah, so training, definitely. And then of course, like, tailor the framework to meet the variables. Take the framework that is made for any company to take, and then say, okay, if this framework needs to help us achieve more trust in our teams and achieve a better way of working with shared models, the same models, and a better way of having cohesion and these things, then how do we use it?
Okay.
It becomes complex, I know, and it's a changeable.
I mean, that's right. Making sure that right training is provided to them, right mindset has to be there. Especially when we talk about agile team, an agile team is not traditional project management team where you work on design, work on the coding, and then finally testing. Here you do everything. So you kind of you need to break the barriers and allow them or tell their team, hey guys, you have to work together, whether you're a developer or tester or whatever. You need to work together and as a team and supporting each other. It's a team performance, not about you individual performance, and you need to be, that mindset has to be created by training, by team building activities, or whatever is required. And having the right coach available around them and keep them. Yes, so a lot can be talked about this particular topic, and I hope we have answered enough. If you have anything further you want to ask, please let us know. And but yeah, thank you for your question, and all the questions came through to us. And thank you, Frederik, for your answering from your experience and your learning. And I hope people find it useful. And if they want further discussion with you or with me for anything, we are open, join us or connect. If you're not connected via LinkedIn, please do that. Connect with us with LinkedIn or book time with me. At least I have a link, link you probably seen, or maybe on the video you can find somewhere. And book time with me, discuss with me what to do and what not to do when you're preparing for any certification exam, especially PMP, PgMP, PfMP, or any other exam. I will be more than happy to walk you through, take you through the journey, make sure whether you're joining my programs in Europe. I'm actually coming to Germany and Italy in May, and traveling to Saudi Arabia and other part of the United States and Canada. And happy to have you in my courses, in my virtual courses or in my physical courses. And you can learn from me at, differently if you want. Any particular preference, we can talk about it. Okay, with this, I think I don't see any more questions, and you've done really well, and we are on time. And thank you to all the people joined today, and thank you for people asking the question, and thank you, Frederik, for taking all the question and answering those questions, and make this session more exciting and more enjoyable to everyone. Any last minute thoughts you have? Any questions? Anything else you have to share?
No, in the beginning, the first question you asked me was how I found working with you and the PfMP studies. And I think one of the things you do different from a lot of the other, let's call it vendors or suppliers of this educational market, is the emphasis on using small teams. I were part of the team. We were three that had the education together, and we still talk together, and it's a very valuable way of learning, not just from you, but actually learning from two other people who are also what you call senior, well advanced, actually smart people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to go through this journey of whether it's a group program, personal program. You learn a lot, not only from me, but also from other people, your colleagues, and I've seen people actually become friends and stay friends for many, many years. And you keep learning from each other, and who knows, you're exchanging your resume with each other, or you're exchanging the business plan, investments happening. I've seen this happening. So it's a wonderful program because it's over multiple weeks. Who knows what can happen? So yeah, I really remember that those days when you were in the class with two other people, we are having lots of discussion, and you're the first person to pass the exam. And the second person passing the exam just last week only, and the third person is doing the exam on 1st of March. So fingers crossed. So all three will be PfMP, and I'm happy to see the result.
Sure.
All right. With this, I think that's enough from us today. And once again, I'd like to thank you to all of the people who joined today, and you as a Frederik, and my team who worked behind the scene to make this session come to this point, very, very high quality. And so thank you, team. And till next time, which is not far away, 2 weeks away, and you will see another person, another leader coming from different experience. So please stay tuned, and you will see me with somebody else. So till that time, bye, ciao, take care.